A 3-judge panel has voted in favor of temporarily halting legal protections for journalists reporting on the unrest in Portland, Oregon. This is a devastating blow for the constitutional rights of journalists and freedom of press. The case actually has to do with the violence that some of these reporters have been confronted with at the hands of federal agents and local police in Portland. And so earlier, before this latest ruling was handed down, a federal judge named Michael Simon ruled that journalists and legal observers were exempt from federal officers' physical force, arrest, or other treatment if the officers reasonably know that a person is a journalist or legal observer. But in a 2-1 decision, the judges on the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with the government, meaning the Trump administration, that Judge Simon's initial ruling was supposedly too broad. The matter was heard by the 9th Circuit judges Eric Miller, Daniel Bress, and M. Margaret McNone. 2 of these judges, Miller and Bress, are both appointed to the bench by President Donald Trump. They're the ones who lifted the injunction. So I know that people like to minimize the impact of electing someone who's awful, especially when it comes to their Supreme Court nominations or the judges they appoint. But this is the kind of stuff that will impact the country negatively for years to come. Okay, so it's just something to keep in mind. These are 2 judges appointed by Trump, and look at the ruling that they handed down. And here's the majority opinion. Given the order's breadth and lack of clarity, particularly in its non-exclusive indicia of who qualifies as journalists and legal observers, appellants have also demonstrated that in the absence of a stay, the order will cause irreparable harm to law enforcement efforts and personnel. This means that journalists could be subjected to the same physical force as that of the individuals participating. So Malaika, you're an attorney. I would love for you to jump in and decode some of this for us. I personally believe that this ruling by the 3-judge panel in the 9th Circuit is BS. And this is a devastating blow for freedom of press, especially when you have all these dishonest actors with right-wing propaganda sites running with a narrative that benefits their political cause. And it's increasingly difficult to get factual reporting on the ground, so we can actually know what's happening in places like Portland, Kenosha. You get the picture.
Yeah, I'd want to take a look at the ruling in its totality, just so that I'm, making sure that I don't miss any of the context. But I'll also add that and I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but I will add that the law is not just some objective, body of, it's in a vacuum. It's not made in a vacuum. As much as we talk about the Supreme Court and the law being blind and having blind justice, it's very political. And so you have certain arguments that are based on precedent, but there are also arguments that are made on kind of new judge-made law, where judges themselves are making the law based on what they think the facts present themselves as, or based on what analysis or kind of outside data they're receiving. And so I think this is definitely a political decision. I would push back on the kind of maybe the assumption that because these are Trump appointees, this is why they're doing it, as if this wouldn't happen under a liberal president, because we also know, especially with the Democratic nominee that we have right now, he's pushed for law and order. He has pushed to, as we talked about earlier, to fund police officers even more. He's not really a liberal in any sense of the word. He's actually quite conservative. So I'm not sure what a Biden presidency would bring when it comes to his appointments. But we know that this is what Trump has done. This is what he does encourage. So we can only deal with what the facts that we're dealt with right now. But I think this is largely political more than based on any legal reason.
Right, and so the ACLU responded to this and believes that this ruling is unconstitutional and violates the First Amendment protections for journalists. And hopefully they intend on pushing this case further because it is important for us to have actual factual reporting on the ground. Otherwise, what are we gonna do? We're gonna rely on Andy Knows narrative, and clearly he's not an honest actor in this, and neither are the so-called reporters from the Daily Caller. I want to know from people on the ground who actually have an interest in sharing what's really happening on the ground, so we have the facts. And a lot of what's being talked about when it comes to this unrest has relied on piecing together social media posts and videos and tweets and pictures, and I hate that. Like, it's fine, it's good to have that kind of evidence to maybe reinforce or fact check the reporting on the ground, but it's not nearly enough if we want to get an accurate picture of what's happening. Yeah. And by the way, I mean, these journalists we've seen videos of federal agents attacking journalists pretty aggressively, especially in DC, so Trump can do his little photo op. So it's a form of intimidation as well, and I don't want us to miss that point.
Absolutely. I mean, and I met reporters when I was in Kenosha who were nearly hit by rubber bullets, if not like grazed by them, where the police officers there were actually targeting them and pointing, tear gas in their direction and pointing their arms in their direction. And so I think it's important to, recognize what we're up against, and I think that's very crucial. And this is going to be an ongoing battle. So hopefully, that can be overturned, and people are still, and the ACLU is still going to push for it.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.